Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Spear Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 13 college football predictions. So last week, I had a record of 13-6, and that brings my record on the season to 177-40. Kicking things off this week with the one game we have on Friday, and that's San Jose State hosting UNLV. So this is an interesting game, as these are two pretty good Mountain West teams, as UNLV is 8-2, and San Jose State is 6-4, but put up a pretty decent fight against Boise State last week. UNLV is great offensively, scoring 39.9 points per game, and they have a great run game, rushing for 250 yards per game. But they face the San Jose State defense isn't the greatest, allowing about 26 points a game and over 150 rushing yards per game. Then offensively for San Jose State, they're not anything too impressive, scoring 28 points per game, and they face a good UNLV defense, which is second best in the Mountain West, allowing just 23.4 points per game. But UNLV is the better team here. I think their offense will play well against a not great defense, and I have UNLV getting the win by a score of 34-20. Moving to the rest of the games, all on Saturday, beginning with Indiana at Ohio State. So this is a huge matchup, as Indiana is currently sitting at 10-0, while Ohio State is 9-1. This is also a huge game for the playoff race, because a loss for Indiana puts them in uncomfortable territory, and I still think they should make the college football playoff at 11-1, but I don't think it's a guarantee, considering how bad their schedule is. Then for Ohio State, they also need to win this game, because if they were to go 10-2, then things get interesting of if they'll make the playoff. But these are two really good teams, and I think we should see a great game. Indiana is great offensively, scoring 43.9 points per game, which is second most in the country. Plus, they have a great passing game with quarterback Curtis Rourke, and they're averaging 276 passing yards per game. But then I'll face an elite Ohio State defense that is allowing just 10.3 points per game, which is tied for the fewest in the country. Plus, the Buckeyes have a top 10 defense against the pass, allowing just 160 passing yards per game. Although we have seen Ohio State get beat through the air a couple times this season. On the flip side, Ohio State is great offensively, scoring 37.8 points per game, and they match up against a good Indiana defense that is allowing just 13.8 points per game, and great against both the run and the pass. But this is a really interesting game, and arguably the biggest game in program history for Indiana. I do think there's a chance they get the win, especially if Curtis Rourke and the offense can find success through the air. But I'm going to take Ohio State to get the win. I think they're the better team overall. I think they'll be able to contain a good Indiana offense. Plus, they're home, and they've already played a couple of top 10 teams this season. Whereas for Indiana, this is their first time playing a ranked team yet so far this season. But I have Ohio State getting the win. I think they're the better overall team. I think Indiana keeps this close, but Ohio State controls most of the game and wins by a score of 27-17. Up next, we have Miami hosting Wake Forest. So Miami is playing their first game since they lost to Georgia Tech a couple weeks ago, as they're coming off a bye, and then they'll play a Wake Forest team sitting at 4-6. Miami is the highest scoring offense in the country, scoring 45 points per game. Plus, they have the best passing offense in the country, averaging 368 passing yards per game. And the Wake Forest defense is not good, allowing 32.5 points per game, plus they're allowing 281 passing yards per game. So Cam Ward and the Miami offense are going to have a field day against a bad defense. Then offensively for Wake Forest, they're okay, scoring 27.7 points per game, but they will not be able to keep up with Miami. Miami gets back on track, and they destroy Wake Forest by a score of 45-14. Moving on, we have Ole Miss at Florida. So Florida is in the middle of a brutal stretch, but they just convincingly upset LSU, and they're looking to build on that. Florida's offense is solid at scoring 28 points per game, but they face a great Ole Miss defense that's allowing just 12.9 points per game, and in their last time out, they held Georgia to just 10 points. On the flip side, Ole Miss is great offensively, putting up 40.7 points per game, plus star receiver Trey Harris is set to return from injury after missing about a month. And they face a Florida defense that is allowing over 26 points per game. I do think there's a slight chance for the upset here, but Ole Miss is a much better team than LSU. Despite losing to LSU, Ole Miss is much better. I don't think Florida upsets Ole Miss like they did LSU last week. And Ole Miss, they have a big game offensively against a struggling defense, and they win by a score of 35-20. Next game, we have Virginia hosting SMU. So SMU is a great team. They're 9-1, they've won 7 straight games. They face a solid Virginia team sitting at 5-5, although Virginia, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. SMU is great offensively, putting up 40 points per game, and they face a not great Virginia defense that's allowing over 27 points per game. Then offensively for Virginia, they don't have the offense to keep up with SMU, as they're scoring just 24.8 points per rim, plus SMU is good defensively, allowing just 22.4 points per rim. SMU is the better team here on both sides of the ball. They'll play well offensively against a bad defense, and they win this game easily by a score of 37-17. Up next, we have Illinois at Rutgers. So this is quietly a good matchup, as both these teams are pretty solid, and they're also very similar. Illinois is 7-3, Rutgers is 6-4. Offensively, both these teams are decent, and they're run-first offenses, as Illinois is scoring 27.1 points per rim, and they're rushing for 142 yards per rim. Then for Rutgers, they're scoring 26.3 points per rim, and rushing for 169 yards per rim. Then defensively, these teams are also pretty similar, as Illinois is allowing 20.3 points per rim, and allowing 148 rushing yards per rim, while Rutgers is allowing 23.4 points per rim, and also allowing 148 rushing yards per rim. But these are two very similar teams, which makes this game extremely difficult to predict, and I think both teams will find some success on the ground because neither team stops the run all that well. But Rutgers is home. I'm a big fan of running back Kyle Monunga. I think he'll have a big game, and I've got Rutgers getting the win here by a score of 23-20. But this is a game that could definitely go either way. Moving on, we have UMass at Georgia. This game should not be close. UMass is terrible. They're just 2-8, and both their wins have come against FCS teams. Then they'll face Georgia, who's a top 10 team, and coming off a big win over Tennessee. Georgia does need to avoid a letdown game. This game won't be close. Georgia wins 45-7. Next game, we have UTEP at Tennessee. This is another game that shouldn't be close, and it's kind of annoying how an SEC school, or really any team, can just randomly schedule either an FCS team or a bad group of 5 team randomly in the middle of November. But Tennessee, they're looking for a bounce-back win after their loss to Georgia last week. They should be able to get the win, as I think they'll easily beat UTEP, who's just 2-8, and Tennessee wins by a score of 42-3. Up next, we have Kentucky at Texas. So getting back into the actually competitive matchups, Texas is coming off a less than impressive win over Arkansas, as they won that game by just 10 points, and then they'll face a Kentucky team that's just 4-6, although Kentucky has upset Ole Miss so far this season. But Kentucky's offense is terrible, scoring just 21.9 points per rim, which is worse than the SEC. And then they'll face a great Texas defense, which is best in the SEC and 4th best in the country, allowing just 11.9 points per rim. Now, while Kentucky is bad offensively, their defense is pretty solid, allowing just 19.3 points per rim. And Texas, they're good offensively, scoring 37 points per rim, but they were bad last week, and I could see them getting off to a slow start against a good Kentucky defense. But I think this is a game that ends up being closer than expected in the first half before Texas pulls away in the second half, and Texas ends up with the easy win, 34-10. Moving on, we have Penn State at Minnesota. So Minnesota is a quietly solid team sitting at 6-4, but they now host Penn State. Minnesota relies heavily on their defense, allowing just 17.7 points per rim, and they now face a Penn State offense that's scoring 33 points per rim, but I don't think the Penn State offense is anything too impressive. Penn State is also good defensively, allowing just 13.8 points per rim, and Minnesota is decent offensively, scoring 26.7 points per rim. But because both these teams are great defensively, I think this is going to lead to a lower scoring game, and because of that, I think this is going to be a game that is too close for comfort for Penn State. But in the end, Penn State has the better defense or the better overall team. Their offense will do enough against a good defense, and Penn State wins in a close game, 24-17. Moving on, we have BYU at Arizona State. So this is a really interesting matchup, as BYU, they're coming off their first loss of the season, as last week they fell to Kansas 17-13, and then they'll face an Arizona State team that is having a very underrated season, sitting at 8-2, and coming off a convincing win over another good Big 12 team in Kansas State. But this is a really interesting matchup, as offensively for Arizona State, they're scoring 30.8 points per rim, and they have a great run game led by star running back Cam Scatabo, and Arizona State is rushing for 190 yards per rim. They now face a BYU defense that is the second best scoring defense in the Big 12, allowing 19.5 points per rim, but they're not the greatest against the run, allowing 140 rushing yards per rim. On the flip side, BYU is scoring 31.6 points per rim, and they have a very balanced attack between the run and the pass. And they face a good Arizona State defense, allowing 22.8 points per rim. But this is a really interesting game. I could definitely see BYU coming out strong and looking to get back on track after an upset loss last week. But I don't know if they're going to be able to slow down Cam Scatabo and Arizona State run game. But I'm going to take Arizona State to get the win. I think they'll run the football effectively, plus they're home. And I've got Arizona State winning this game by a score of 23-21. But this game can definitely go either way. Up next, we have Colorado at Kansas. So Kansas is having a disappointing season at just 4-6, but they've been playing well and playing spoiler for some of the Big 12 title contenders. As 2 weeks ago they destroyed Iowa State, and last week they upset BYU. And then they'll face another Big 12 title contender in Colorado. And Colorado will actually make the Big 12 championship game if they win out. So that makes this really interesting. But Colorado is great offensively, scoring 34.1 points per game, and they have a great passing game, throwing for 322 yards per game. Now, the Kansas defense isn't great, allowing 24.6 points per game, but on the flip side, Kansas is pretty good offensively, scoring 30.2 points per game, and they have a great run game, rushing for 200 rushing yards per game. They face a Colorado defense that's pretty good, allowing 22.7 points per game, but they're okay against the run, allowing 138 rushing yards per game. But I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think Colorado will have a great game offensively, but I think if Kansas can run the football, I think they can keep pace in this game. But in the end, Colorado's offense is just too good for Kansas to keep up with, and I've got Colorado getting the win in a higher scoring game, 34-23. Moving on, we have the Citadel at Clemson. This is another game where we have a top 20 team facing an FCS team. The Citadel isn't even a good FCS team, sitting at 5-6. Clemson's going to win this game easily, 55-3. Up next, we have Wofford at South Carolina. Another game where a good team plays an FCS team. South Carolina, they're coming off a big win over Missouri. They need to avoid a letdown, but I think they will definitely be able to do so, considering they're playing an FCS team that's just 5-6. South Carolina wins easily, 42-6. Moving on, we have Missouri at Mississippi State. So Missouri is 7-3, but I have no idea how they're still ranked in the top 25, because the only good teams they've played this season, those being Texas A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina, they've lost all of them, and 2 of those games haven't even been close. But Missouri, they now face a struggling Mississippi State team, as Mississippi State is just 2-8 on the season. Missouri is pretty good offensively, scoring 28.2 points per game, and they're going to have a big game against a terrible Mississippi State defense that is worse than the SEC, allowing 34.4 points per game. On the flip side, Mississippi State is solid offensively, scoring 27.6 points per game, but they play a pretty good Missouri defense that's allowing even 20 points per game. But Missouri, they're the much better team here, and despite me not thinking they should still be ranked in the top 25, they're much better than Mississippi State, and they'll win this game easily by a score of 35-13. Up next, we have Boise State at Wyoming. Boise State is a great team sitting at 9-1, and then will play a pretty bad Wyoming team at 2-8. And Wyoming also lost to an FCS team earlier this season. Boise State has the 3rd best scoring offense in the country, putting up 43.6 points per game, plus they have a great run game with Ashton Jeanty. Boise State now faces a bad Wyoming defense that's allowing 30.9 points per game and over 200 rushing yards per game. So Ashton Jeanty is going to have a monster game. Then offensively for Wyoming, they're not great. They're scoring just 20 points a game, and with an offense that bad, there's no way they're going to keep up with Boise State. Boise State wins easily. They win their 9th game in a row and win by a score of 45-10. Moving on, we have Army against Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium. So this is another interesting game, as we have Notre Dame winners with 8th straight, and they have a 9-1 record, against Army, who's undefeated, sitting at 9-0. Now, while Army is undefeated, they really haven't played anybody, as they've played just 1 game against a team with a winning record. But this is a really interesting matchup because these teams have great defenses. Army is allowing just 10.3 points per game, which is tied for fewest in the country. Plus, they're allowing just 273 yards per game, which is 5th best. But they play a Notre Dame offense that is playing well, as Notre Dame is averaging 38 points per game, which ranks 11th in the country. On the other side, Notre Dame is also elite defensively, allowing 11.4 points per game, which is 3rd best. But Army's offense is good, scoring 35.2 points per game, and obviously they have a great run game, leading the country with 334 rushing yards per game. And they're led by star quarterback Bryson Daly, who has over 1,000 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns so far this season. Now, Notre Dame already faced a triple option team when they played Navy, and they dominated that game, winning 51-14. I think this game will be a lot closer, because Army's defense is a lot better, but I do still have Notre Dame getting the win. Army is good offensively, but they haven't played a defense like Notre Dame, who might be the best defense in the country. I think Notre Dame's offense will have enough success despite playing a really good Army defense, and I have Notre Dame handing Army their first loss season and ending up with a pretty convincing win, 34-13. Moving on, we have Alabama at Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is pretty bad. They're 5-5, and they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Their one win in that stretch came against Maine, who's an FCS team. But Oklahoma's offense is not good, scoring just 25.1 points a game, and then they'll face a good Alabama defense that is allowing 16.9 points per game. On the flip side, Alabama is scoring just shy of 40 points a game, but they play an okay Oklahoma defense that's allowing 22 points per game. Alabama, they're the better team here. Their offense will play well. Oklahoma won't be able to keep up, and I've got Alabama winning this game easily, 38-14. Next game we have Texas A&M at Auburn. So this is an interesting game because Texas A&M, they face a not great Auburn team, but I think this could be a very tricky game for them because this could be a trap game with Texas on the schedule next week. Plus, having to go to Jordan-Hare Stadium or play at Auburn is never easy. But Texas A&M, they're good offensively, scoring 31.6 points per game, and they're averaging 212 rushing yards per game. But they face an Auburn team that's solid defensively, allowing 18.7 points per game, and very good against the run, allowing just 104 rushing yards per game. And on the flip side, Auburn's offense isn't the greatest, scoring 27.6 points a game, and they face a great Texas A&M defense that's allowing 19.4 points a game. But this is a game where I can definitely see the upset. I think this could very well be a trap game for Texas A&M. I am going to take Texas A&M to get the win. They're the better overall team, and I think their defense is better, and that's the difference. But this game is going to be way too close for comfort and way closer than it should be. But I've got Texas A&M just barely escaping with a 20-17 win. And our final game, we have Utah hosting Iowa State. So this is another interesting game because Iowa State, they started the season strong at 7-0, but they've lost 2 of their last 3 games. Then for Utah, they were thought to have been a contender in the Big 12, but they're just 4-6. But this is an interesting matchup because these teams are pretty similar. Offensively for Iowa State, they're scoring 31.4 points a game, and they win on the run, rushing for 166 yards per game. Then for Utah, they're not great offensively, scoring just 22.7 points a game, but they're also a run-first team, rushing for 138 yards per game. Then defensively, Iowa State is the best scoring defense in the Big 12, allowing 18.6 points per game. But while their defense is very good, they're actually terrible against the run, allowing 184 rushing yards per game. And then for Utah, they're allowing 20.3 points per game, and they're good against the run, allowing 125 rushing yards per game. But this is another game where I wouldn't be shocked to see an upset, because Utah is home, and Utah has a good defense as well. But I would not be shocked to see the upset, but I do have Iowa State getting the win. I don't think Utah will be able to do enough offensively against good Iowa State defense, and I've got Iowa State getting the win in a close, low-scoring game, 22-21. But those are my Week 13 college football predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of their upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible. Be sure to check out the community tab of my channel, where you guys can vote on who you think will win some of this week's big games. But thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.